with the exhaust out of here, there's even more room. So we have a ton of room to get to the bolts up there. All kinds of room to disconnect. The next thing I'm gonna do though, before we disconnect everything on top of the transmission, is I'm gonna remove this transmission mount. It's just these 4 16mm bolts, which I've already loosened. And then I'm gonna get the transmission jack under here and get this supported. I don't really like this floor jack under here. I don't really feel safe under the transmission. So I'm gonna do that next. Trying to put all the bolts back where they came, so remember where they went, and then leaves less of a mess. Okay, so this is gonna be the transfer from the floor jack to the transmission jack, just so be a little safer under here. One end of the transmission jack does angle up, which is pretty helpful. Loosen that so I can kind of meet the angle of the transmission as I go up. Something important, we're moving the transmission and transfer case as an assembly, so it's very important that you put the transmission jack towards the back of the transmission, just so you're right in the middle. You're at the pendulum, you are the pendulum, however that works, but you're in the middle of all this weight to keep it balanced so it doesn't fall one way or the other. I think we need a spacer. We'll see if how low we can go safely with the floor jack. Maybe it'll be alright. Yeah, I need a spacer. I'm gonna use this 2x6 as a spacer. I have the Jeep jacked up too high. Actually, I wouldn't say too high because it's still kind of gonna be a pain to get the transmission out while it's on top of the jack. I didn't want to take it off the jack just to get it out from under the Jeep. So I'm happy with it, but this is just part of it. So, and it does make it a little more sketchy and top heavy, but this is how I did it last time, and it worked out. It worked out really good. So again, just get this thing as far back as you can. I think right under the center of the gear shifter on the top is pretty good for your center. Just adjusting the angle at the angle of the top of the jack to meet the same angle as the transmission. It'll help get it in too. That's maxed out now. So I'm gonna go ahead and just lower the floor jack the rest of the way. All the weight is on the transmission jack now. I feel a lot safer. Pretty important, I want to show you. We're looking up to the back of the exhaust manifold, right where it meets, or right where it's closest to the firewall. You want to watch that, but that spacing. But you can realistically lower the transmission and transfer case at a pretty drastic angle. Until you're making contact with that. So as long as there's a space between the very end of that manifold and the firewall, or they're barely touching, you're good. Believe it or not, that's actually how the engine sits once you take the transmission off. You can actually kind of see a dent in the firewall where the engine actually sits right there, so the exhaust manifold touches right there after you take the transmission off, but you don't want to put too much pressure there. So at this point, you can go ahead and start lowering her down and strap. Put the strap. Alright, I messed up. So this strap might look kind of dinky, but it actually makes the transmission way more secure when it's on this jack. So I'm gonna lift it back up with the floor jack and then get that strap around the transmission. Making sure I go under everything, all the wires and the linkage. Definitely don't wanna go on top of any of that stuff. I just try to tighten that down as much as you can. It's pretty important. Especially with the transfer case offset to one side. I already did it just like this, and I didn't have any issues, I promise. Alright, now I'm going to lower it as much as possible to get to everything on top. Just paying attention to that gap like I was talking about. This gap right here. You can see light through it still, so still got plenty of room. I'm going to keep lowering the transmission. Of course, while you're lowering it, you want to make sure that there is nothing with tension on it. none of these connectors. The sooner you can disconnect them, the better. Looks like we still got some room up there. But we're getting pretty close. I'm gonna lower it a tiny bit more. And then I'm gonna just start disconnecting stuff. As far as disconnecting stuff, you have slave cylinder to disconnect. You have the transfer case linkage that you have to pull off. I already got that off. You just pull pretty hard, pop it off. This linkage, by the way, is gonna be under this piece right here. You just squeeze the little ears on this plastic piece. Let me show you. So to get this linkage out, it's gonna be in this little metal C right there. To get it out, it's really easy. You just squeeze together this plastic clip and it pulls right out of there. The other part, you know, the end though, that's actually kind of hard. You really just have to pull, get a good grip on it and pull straight out because it comes off. Little all the connectors, you'll have to get up as close as you can, but you know, most of them have buttons to release them. And there's only one for the transfer case, sensor for the transfer case, 4-wheel drive. Another sensor here, maybe it's a speed sensor, connects right there, right below the shifter. And then that was the O2 sensor actually. Okay, so to remove the slave cylinder, it's really simple. Then you got these two, what is that? They're 14mm nuts. Loosen them, and then you can kind of compress the slave cylinder in towards the bell housing, and you can take it right off. Having a hard time getting enough slack to get this out, so I'm gonna lift it all the way back up, or at least somewhat. That's as high as it goes. There we go. Whew. Get that out of the way. Coming to the passenger side. The only thing we have to deal with would be a bolt holding the fuel lines up there. Lines up there. Just gotta remove that. This Jeep is missing that. And then there's a vacuum line or a vent. Actually, sorry, that's a vent line for the transfer case. That just slides right off a tube on the transfer case side. All this stuff is important so you don't ruin it when you lower the transmission. Just slides right off and push it to the side. All right, now passenger side. What we really have is bolts up here, which I'll lower the transmission again and get those, and then this sensor right here. It has a lock on it, very similar to the fuel pump connector. Just have to move that lock. Push the button and pull out. Pretty simple. This is a ground strap that is no longer connected, so just gonna move that to the side for now. Okay, this should be the last time I lower the transmission. To that gap up here between the back of the manifold and the firewall. Talking about this gap right here, where the little dent is. All right, I would say that's about as low as we can go. It's pretty significant if you look at it from the side. Pretty good angle going on right now to like the floor. So this transfer case is hanging way down now, and it'll make you nervous seeing it. You ensure that you disconnected everything. You can get up here and check again. Most importantly, those bolts on top are super accessible. Got one. Really easy to get to with how low we can get the transmission. So There's also a big 18mm bolt on each side, midway down the bell housing. The driver's side, passenger side. Those might be good to do last. All right, so I'm gonna do one last check to make sure everything's kind of separated from the transmission. Get the slave cylinder zip tied out of the way, and then we're gonna start bolting. So I'm just gonna get this slave cylinder out of the way. There's the upper control arm mount up here that's like perfect for this, so I'm just gonna get it as far out of the way as possible and zip tie it. Starter little cable, and then we got the harness up here loose, all the connectors apart, got the linkage apart. Kind of move that up here now and stuff it up over the frame. This harness can pretty much pull all of that out. Nothing's holding that. Gonna do the same thing. Stuff that over here through the frame. I'll kind of keep it out of the way. Even though you like disconnect stuff, it could totally still get snagged. So I'm just trying to move it all out of harm's way. Give us some more room to work with without stuff in the way. Yeah, so we're good. The amount of space is crazy. If you're safe about it, you know, don't go too low. You could lower this thing. So much room. Can almost crawl over to the other side. All right, what's up guys? This is actually day 3. I'm only able to work on the Jeep like a couple hours a day. So GoPro has been dying on me. I've been running out of SD cards, so I'm so ready to get this transmission out. It's all bolted, ready to come out. So I just want to show the process of getting it out and maybe give you a bit of an idea on how to get the, you know, the right amount of extensions and sockets up there. I know there's a fine line between being too short and not having the room to get to those top bell housing bolts, and the other end of the spectrum is having like 4 feet of extensions. I've been there, done that on like a 300ZX. I had to take the transmission out of that like twice, and literally the only way was to have a bunch of extensions. Like I think it was about 4 feet of extensions so you could have that wiggle room. But when you do that, it's like when you torque on them, they kind of all twist and you're not getting that torque on the bolt. So with the Jeep, I'll show you. All right, so with the Jeep, I am using all 1/2-inch stuff, and I'm using a deep well 18mm socket and a regular like 3-inch extension, and then another, what, 5-inch, 6-inch extension. I'm using this because this is all I have. But it works perfect because it gets me right to the end of the top of the bell housing where it starts to taper down. It's right here. This is where it starts. The bell housing starts to taper down and get more skinny, more narrow. But there's going to be two bolts at the very top, and they're honestly easy to get to, especially if you use an extension like this, because that allows you actually a bunch of room when you torque on it. So for example, there's a bolt way up here at the top, and there's plenty of room to kind of move the ratchet. Not a whole lot, but enough to break the bolts loose. So anyways, hope that helps you out. You don't need a bunch of extensions to get all the way, you know, back here by the transfer case. So you don't need 4 feet of extension. There's no reason for it. You can go right here with about this long of extension, so it's less than a foot. I think with the deep well, it might be close to a foot, but you get the point. So anyways, transmission is just being held by these 18mm bolts here that are super easy to get to. I just wanted to leave those for last instead of the easiest. So I'm gonna go ahead and take those out and then push this transmission out. Finally. So you can do this any way you want, but I'm gonna go ahead and push from the front of the transmission backwards just because it's easiest. I can actually do this. Is awkward. This is awkward to show you, but I'm gonna do it from like the front of the Jeep, I guess, facing backwards. It's easiest, believe me. You can just push the transmission away. And I've already got the transmission like supported, so it's just loose in here. I can actually move it backwards right now, even with these bolts in. So it's like perfect height to where there's not a lot of pressure on that that input shaft, that transmission input shaft. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these last two bolts out. They were easy to take out. Like, that's a sign that this is gonna come out easy. And it's a sign, in my opinion, that you have it at the right height. So now I'm just gonna push backwards, and it shouldn't pop or anything crazy. There is this wiring harness bracket up here that you have to slip over the bell housing. Maybe I can show that. It's really hard to see. It's at the very top of the bell housing, but we'll see if we can show you. It's this little bracket that just holds these wires, and it slips up. See, there's the black part. Hopefully you see it over the bell housing, that hole. That needs to flip up to slip up over the bell housing. Getting this bracket up over the top is a pain, I'm not gonna lie. That's all it is though. There you go. It's like you need to push it backwards and pop this thing over at the same time. Alright. Okay, just pop it up over on the other side, on the front side of the bell housing. And then we should be good to go. I think we actually might need to lower the transmission a little bit. I think I have it too high. It's kind of floating right now. Oof. I think that was the input shaft popping out. So the engine wants to keep tilting backwards. Lower than I wanted it to. Oh shit. Alright, so this thing wants to tilt backwards. I should have supported it more towards the transfer case. It's kind of too late right now, so I'm just gonna it just takes a little bit of pressure on the front to keep it down, so I'm just gonna try to get it down. And I'll reposition it. Woo, baby. Yeah, I definitely should have put it further back. A second hand would be awesome, if possible. Transmission drop should always kind of be done with two people. So I'm just keeping some weight on the front of the bell housing, but it's kind of leveled out now. Just with it, the transmission jack up so high, it just dramatizes everything. Beautiful clutch. I don't know if you can see it. Glad to see it again. So let's get the transmission out of here. Finally. Alright, it's barely high enough to get this out. doesn't look high. If I gotta shift to, what's that? 4th? Maybe? Yeah, baby. Millimeters. Alright, so just so you don't do this, this is where I have the transmission centered on the transmission jack. That is not far enough forward, so I'd recommend having this lower most part of the transmission right before it meets the transfer case, at least in the middle of the transmission jack, which I'm going to reposition it now just because you can see it just wants to kind of wheelie. So anyways, let's reposition that real quick just so it's safe moving around. But if I remember correctly, I spaced this up with a piece of wood. So if you can handle that, makes it pretty secure. Yeah. Love it. Alright, so I still can't really show you what's going on accurately, but to give you an idea, this is what I was expecting to see, is the bell housing was perfectly clean before I did this, so you can see the mess. This was clean, like I degreased it and scrubbed it, it was perfect. So you can see all the crap now in it and oil that's going onto the flywheel and then just getting flung around, originating from the rear main seal leak. So that's what I was expecting to see. And I'm just grateful. Hopefully it didn't ruin the clutch. This is a spec, really expensive spec clutch I got. And I'm glad I did, it's awesome. But man, it would suck to ruin it. So here's what the clutch looks like. My biggest worry is that there's oil getting onto the friction material. I don't really know how to tell. It looks like it might, be difficult for that to happen regardless. Luckily. So that's cool. I mean, if it drenched the bell housing and then started dripping down from the top of the clutch, I could see how it could get into the friction material. I mean, it's completely open. So let's just hope that it didn't. There's no way to fix it really. So all right, so take your clutch alignment tool if you still have it. Hopefully you do. Put that all the way in, and then I'm just gonna take off the pressure plate. I'm excited. This is an exciting part, I think. I'm using a 1/2-inch drive just because these are pretty tight, especially if you try to keep tight them. So yeah, these are 10 millimeter. I thought they'd be easier. I think the engine needed to get to top dead center to kind of lock up a little more. There we go. So I'm just loosening them all a little bit instead of loosening them, one by one. Now these bolts aren't very long, and this pressure plate is heavy for me. Just definitely want to pay attention to how many threads you got left in there. I'm glad to see this clutch again though. It's like the prettiest clutch I've ever had. In a way I'm glad, because it's cool. Super cool clutch. But definitely kind of bummed to have to do this in the first place. So I have all these pretty loose. They're not that long, so you want to be careful. This thing will just fall straight into your lap, I guess. There are the alignment pins though, so that'll help you out. There's 3 alignment pins that you'll see. So as long as you're kind of keeping pressure on the pressure plate towards the flywheel, it won't come off at you. Okay, you got one bolt left. Just kind of putting pressure on it so it doesn't slip off. That should be it. I'm just gonna lift it off the alignment. Sorry, the camera stopped recording for some reason. But like I said, after I got the last bolt off, I just slid it right off these alignment pins. So it's not super heavy, but yeah, that's the next step. Just slide it off, easy as that. So the next step is just take the clutch off, the clutch disc, and it just slides right off with the alignment tool. All looks pretty dry. Happy to see that. Besides some grease. But yeah, it looks good. Luckily, no damage was done with this rear main seal leak. Happy about that. Next step is getting the flywheel off. So this next step requires something kind of weird, just because I didn't really have it and I haven't really used them. But it's a T50 like star bit. This I think is a security star bit or something that I found. My mom gave it to me actually. But yeah, kind of a weird little bit. But that's what's required to take the flywheel off. So I think I got these off with the impact last time, which I don't have right now. So I have a little baby impact though. So that's gonna take a different tool. I think I used a half-edge impact, electric impact, to get these off last time, and then I torqued them down with a torque wrench. So that's gonna have to wait till I get a bigger impact. Bummer. What's up? I'm back. I was able to borrow this from my dad real quick. This is a half-edge impact, and it's badass. So I already started a few of these bolts. They came right out. The only tip I can give you on this is make sure this bit is all the way in those bolts. This little star bit thing that I was trying to show earlier. I think they're fragile, and that would suck if you stripped it, especially the flywheel bolts. So I'm gonna get the rest of these out. The last one, be super careful. This thing is heavy, and it will slip right off as soon as you take that bolt out. So this is actually kind of tough to do. But I'm gonna do my best and show you and try to get to the rear main seal, because that's the whole point of this video. Also, the rest of this video is gonna go fast because I don't have much SD card left and I really want to get this done. So I'm gonna go through the rest fast and yeah. All right. Alright, last bolt. I'm just pushing up on this thing. I can feel it wanting to slide off. I'm not even gonna worry about taking this last bolt out. I'm just gonna take it off with the bolt. There we go. Bam. Now I got it resurfaced and it kind of lightened the flywheel up a little bit. As you can see, it was all fresh for the new clutch. But bam, this is that rear main seal.